Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy, Thoughts on the Torah. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. So when you look in the book of Numbers, chapter 25, verses 17 and 18, God instructs Moses to tell the people, you should assail the Midyanites, and you should smite. You should defeat them. And he explains in verse 18, because they assailed you. They caused terror to you. With their trickery, which they tricked you into the worship of the idol of Peor. Now the question is, this is unprecedented and perhaps even never ever repeated. Where do we find that the Torah should command us to wholesalely destroy an entire people, just wipe them out? I guess the only other place we find it is by Amalek. But what is it about Midian that makes them so deserving, I should say, of God's wrath, that he tells us to kill them, to destroy them indiscriminately? In other words, to totally eradicate them. What is this all about? Where do we find this? And perhaps you can argue, what about the little children? They didn't do anything wrong. Why would God want them to be punished like this, to be destroyed? Well, I want you to think of one of the most terrible illnesses that still has not yet been totally eradicated. Hopefully soon it will. But the fact is that, God forbid, if somebody comes down with cancer, what is the real way of treating cancer? Not just attacking the cancer itself, but anything that's associated with it, destroying it, because the cancer is something which does no good for the body, and all it does is it continues to fester, God forbid, and harm, destroy everything around it indiscriminately until it takes the person's life. You see, the real question here is, it wasn't just Midian who sought to do harm to the Jews. It was also Moab. Moab also, in fact, Balak, who was the one who originated this entire whole problem here, so to speak, he was the king of Moab, not the king of Midian. Why then is Midian the one who is selected for this annihilation, for this severe punishment? Shouldn't Moab also be punished for what they caused for the Jewish people? The answer is, and going back to that metaphor of cancer, you see, Moab wasn't just about doing bad. Their intention, their involvement here wasn't just exclusively for the sake of harming the Jews. In fact, they had a reason, they had a motive, a logical, a practical motive to want to harm the Jews. At least from their perspective, they weren't so wrong, because they were afraid. Since the Jews were in such close proximity to their land, they were afraid that the Jews will, even if they don't kill them or harm them physically, but they're going to loot from them, they're going to steal from them, they may take land from them, they may take their possessions, they may cause them damage. In other words, they had a legitimate, rational reason to want to have some kind of antagonism with the Jews, because they felt threatened by them. Whereas the Midianim, the Midyanites, they had nothing to do with anything with the Jews. They were so far away, the Jews were not on the path in any way in close proximity to their land. The only reason that they came was for pure hatred, pure and absolute anti-Semitism, pure and absolute, indiscriminate, baseless hatred. They just could not stand the Jews. And they got involved in a fight that should have never been theirs. In other words, they're just like cancer. And therefore, God says they stand for, they are the epitome of evil. And evil, once recognized, needs to be eradicated. And that's why God said we have to take them and totally destroy them. Because all they did, all they attempted to do was to bring down the Jewish people for no good end result that would have served them in any way other than them gaining, them achieving the downfall of Jewish people. Whereas the Moab nation, they thought that they're going to be protecting themselves. There is a legitimate, there is a rational, acceptable logic for them to have gotten involved in the first place. And besides, what did the Midyanites do? What did the Midyanites do? They caused the Jews the worst harm. They caused them, they tricked them into sinning with the worst form of sin. And that is unforgivable.